Good morning.
Morning.
We turned on YouTube, so we're being recorded. What time is Slichas by you?
At 7.
Okay, so you're good to go then. We'll be finished
And
long.
you? What time is it by you?
6:45. 6:45. Okay, so let us get started. Today we're going to finish the first parak of Beitzah, and we're going to go into the second parak. So let's see what we have over here. We're on Daf Tes Vav Amud Aleph, which is today's Daf, and we're about 8 lines down from the top. Avaloi Sandal HaMasumah. The Mishnah was discussing the items that you're allowed to send to your friends on Yom Tov. And one of the things that you're not allowed to send is a sandal HaMasumah. It's a shoe that has spikes coming out of it. The way I visualize it is like golf shoes. Right? You know what golf shoes are? There's some spikes at the bottom. What are those called? Cleats. I remember my father had such good taste in fashion that my mother once sent him to buy shoes for me. And the shoes that he loved were golf shoes. And I was terrified. I didn't want to get them. And then we turned them over and there were cleats there. He said, oh, you can't buy them. And I was so relieved. So Zakta Gemara, Sandal HaMasumah, a shoe that you're not allowed to wear on Shabbos. My time Malloy, why can't you send it? And therefore, why is it Muksa? Zakta Gemara, Mishum Maisa Shaya. Because there was a story, the Gemara Shabbos relates a story where the Yidden were holed up in a cave due to some threat that they had from the Goyim, probably the Romans. And there was something that triggered panic that they were going to be discovered, and everyone just trampled each other. And being that they had these cleats on their shoes, many people got killed. And because of that, they said that you're not allowed to wear these types of shoes on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Because the story happened on Shabbos. Yeah, that's the only reason. So it's interesting. They didn't say you can't wear them at all, but they said you can't wear them on Shabbos. So it's not a Shabbos-tic Gzeira. It has nothing to do with protecting the Shabbos. I'm not sure. They said, I guess any day that you can't do Malach. I'm not sure what was the reasoning exactly behind it, but that's what happened. Amar Abaye said, Sandal HaMasumah, Asher L'Naloi, you're not allowed to put it on Yom Tov. However, Mutal Tatloi, it's not Muksa. It's not considered Muksa. Rashi is because it's a Kli. Maybe it's like a Kli from Lach Lisher, but it's a Kli. But it can't be Lisher because it's Mutal Tatloi, it's not Muksa. Asher L'Naloi, Mishum Masha Shahaya. Mutal Tatloi, I can't give you the reason why it's Mutal Tatloi, but I could prove to you that it is Mutal Tatloi. The Mishnah says you're not allowed to send it to somebody else on Yom Tov. If it was Muksa, I don't need the Mishnah to tell you that you're not allowed to send this to your friend on Yom Tov. It's Muksa, you surely can't send it. Even things that aren't Muksa, if they cannot be used on Yom Tov, you're not supposed to send them, we learned in the Mishnah. But this, if it was Muksa, clearly you wouldn't be able to send it. So it must be that it's not Muksa. So you do see clearly from here, even something that you can't wear on Shabbos and Yom Tov that doesn't necessarily make a muksa. So, for instance, a weekday clothing, if you don't wear them on Shabbos and Yom Tov, they wouldn't become muksa. Good morning, Shmuel. Pshita. If it's not sewed together, exactly what is it? You can't use it for anything. That's more like the afagav the noket besichi. And Raj says besichi either means they're pinned together. I guess I know when we used to go to the tailor, when they measured your pants to measure the length, they would pin it, or they would put, I think they call it basting stitches. It's like big open stitches. So it's that's what it means. Not permanent stitching. Nevertheless, you still can't use it. It can't be used in Yom Tov, and therefore you can't send it. A white shoe, meaning it's not yet dyed. Tanya, we learned. Rabbi Yehuda actually says just like our Mishnah, that a black shoe, a shoe that has already been dyed, is going to be allowed, but a white shoe is not. Why? Beitzah. And Beitzah is something Rashi says refers to a doughy composition, a doughy compound. Hagir is a certain type of earth that they used that was black. I guess they rubbed it on the leather, and that's what blackened it. Rabbi Yosy, so since it needs this process still done, you cannot send it on Yom Tov. Rabbi Yosy says exactly the opposite. If you have a blackened shoe that's going to be usher to use. Why? You have to smooth it out, Rashi says, maybe polish it. It's not a machlokes. Mark Yasser. It all depends on when they made shoes, what surface of the hide was on the outside and what surface of the hide was on the inside. If the skin on the outside of the animal, the outer skin, is what they had on the outside, if that's how they used to use it, so then we would say it would be white and would have to be darkened. But if the side that would normally touch the meat was on the outside, that has like stuff on it, strings on it, and things that got to be smoothed off, so then it would need to smooth off. So Mark Yasser. In one city, meaning in Rabbi Yehuda city, the meat was on the inside, which means the same part of the cow that will be on the outside when the cow wears his skin, that's how it would be on your shoes. So therefore, all you need to do is blacken it, but you don't need to smooth it out or polish it out. Rashi is lachlika, to smooth out. But the way they worked is they flipped it over, and the outer hide faced the inside of the shoe, and therefore they had to smooth out and scrape off all of the things that don't belong there. So that's why, depending on how you made the shoe in your area, that's what would determine what the process would be in finishing it, and therefore it would also determine what type of shoe can be sent on Yom Tov and what cannot. Zaklal, so the Mishnah says at the end, anything that you can use on Yom Tov, you could send on Yom Tov. If it can't be used on Yom Tov, you can't send it on Yom Tov. Zakt Gemara, Rav Sheshes allowed people to send tefillin to their friends on Yom Tov. So the problem is tefillin normally is not used on Yom Tov. Zakt Gemara, I'll tell you how to read it. Don't read it anything that you can use on Yom Tov, comma, Neshal Chanoisa, you could send. Rather, Hachikamer, Kol Shenoisna by Bechoil, the Kol Shenoisna by, comma, anything that's usable, it's a completed product, be Yom Tov Meshal Chanoisa. You could send it on Yom Tov. So, Hachikamer Kol Shenoisna by Bechoil, if it's already a finished product and you can use it, then Meshal Chanoisa be Yom Tov, you're allowed to send it on Yom Tov, even if you can't use it on Yom Tov. That's how Rashi learns. Let's learn Rashi inside, because this is actually the subject of a machlokes Rishonim. Well, Klisha Malacha has a problem of muksa, but a non-muksa item that you don't use on Yom Tov. Not necessarily. Are weekday clothing muksa on Yom Tov, on Shabbos? So let's see what Rashi says. Meshach nois b'Yom Tov, the high b'Yom Tov, the katanim esnisin, lava no oisin de la kamekoi. It's not saying that anything you use on Yom Tov. That's not what the word Yom Tov means. Ela meshachan the basrei, b'Yom Tov meshachan oisai. That's how you read it. But here's what's important. Here's the important part of Rashi. Ulasuyet tefillin nasa. This comes to include tefillin. The nami manachlu b'Yom Tov leki isura. There's no issue to wear tefillin on Yom Tov. You're allowed. You don't have a chuv to wear tefillin on Yom Tov, but you're allowed to wear tefillin on Yom Tov. When we were saying al masumar loy, that's also something that's a finished product. That's only the layman midishar rabban l'shachai shma min amut l'navol. We didn't want people to make the connection and say, well, if you can send it, you can use it. So therefore, we don't let you. But tefillin, you can send because you're allowed to wear it. Hagayis Hashri, which is the Rush, says absolutely not. You're not allowed to wear tefillin on Yom Tov because, or on Shabbos either, because of a Zoyar. And the Zoyar says that it says Al Pishnayim Edim Yakum Dover. We're supposed to have two oisais on us. There are three mitzvahs that are oisais. There's Shabbos, there's Milah, and there's Tefillin. Milah is with us 24/7, 365. During the week, we add to it the ois of Tefillin. But on Shabbos and Yom Tov, when you have the ois of Shabbos and Yom Tov, oisi b'nei Yevim b'nei Yisrael, it would be derogatory. It would be disrespectful to the ois of Shabbos if you still wore tefillin, because you're like saying you're not good enough. So therefore, you're not allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So there's actually machlokes between the Hagayis Hashri and the Rashi whether or not it's mutter to wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and we hold that you're not allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Chalamoid is a different story. Well, we had a raya from Rashi earlier. When Rashi was listing off, the Gemara had a shaila. We had it in Sukkah. What's the halacha if you have multiple mitzvahs facing you that you need to do now? Do you need to make an individual bracha on each mitzvah, or you could say, and Make one mitzvah, one bracha to include all the mitzvahs. And as an example of multiple mitzvahs to come together, Rashi uses lulav and esrog, sukkah, tefillin, and tzitzis. When do you ever shake the lulav and wear tefillin at the same time? It must be chalamoid. But those that disagree, those that hold that you don't wear tefillin chalamoid, read that Rashi differently. They say Rashi's listing of two individual pairs of mitzvahs, either tefillin and tzitzis, comma, or lulav and sukkah. Okay, so let's see the Gemara back there. We have another interesting Gemara. Amar Abaye, Zakta Abaye. Tefillin, since we're talking about tefillin, since it became relevant, and we're discussing it, name of Behu Milsa. I want to say a Dvar Halacha regarding tefillin. A person was coming along on the road, and Rashi says this was on Eruv Shabbos, which Tosfos is going to argue, but Rashi says this is Eruv Shabbos. Utfillin b'roisha, and you have tefillin on your head. V'shaka alav chama, and now it's shkia, meaning it's Shabbos. You're not allowed to wear tefillin anymore. You're not supposed to wear tefillin. Maniach yadei alein, you put your hand over them. Why do you need to cover it? For Rashi shalo yirim, so people shouldn't see them. V'chachamim itiru loy lachnisam le'ir derech malbush. The chachamim at least allowed him to bring it into the city derech malbush because he can't carry it to the deraisa. The havar kalachiyad, that would be at least kalachiyad. There wouldn't be an issur deraisa. Why did they waive the issur derabanan? Mishum bizoyin, because to leave your tefillin out in the field wherever you are would be a bizoyin for it. So maniach yad alain ad shem megiel lebeisa, until you get all the way to your home. What if you're sitting in the besmedrash? Rashi says once again, the shuls in those days were besad in the fields. Besad the hayav, eidim mishtamer. So once again, it's not safe. Utfillin b'roishay, the kiddush alav hayayim, and it suddenly became night, and it became Shabbos. Maniach yad alain ad shem megiel lebeisa. So before we get into the Gemara's kasha, Tosfos asks, why is it that there's a difference in the way this Beitzah, or the way Abaye expresses this halacha? When it's talking about the first case, it says v'shaka alav achama. When it's talking about the besmedrash, it says the kiddush alav hayayim. Why is it a different nusach? Tosfos argues around it and says, therefore, v'shaka alav chama is not necessarily on Shabbos. That would even be during the week. And since Laila, lav's man tefillin, since you're not supposed to wear tefillin at night, that's why the chiddush is that you could leave it on. The question, if it's during the week, just carry it in your hand. What's the big deal? What's the problem? The Torah says we're afraid if you carry it in your hand, you might drop it. But if it's on your head, then you won't lose it. So that's the shaila, whether this Gemara of Shakal of Chama in the first case is referring to Chayil or if it's referring to Erev Shabbos. So much of Avhuna B'rei Ravi. So we just said that you're allowed to keep it on your head until you get home, and we're going to waive the Rabbanan of carrying. Zok the Gemara. Master Avhuna B'rei Ravika. Hayabah b'derech utfilin b'roishay yikiddush alav hayayim. So this is the same case. It says Maniach Yadi Alein, but not till you get home. Only at shemagia lebayis hasamach lochay. That's only till the first house. Once you get into the wall and now you're in a safe area, you need to take off the tefillin and leave him in that house, whoever lives there. So I guess the person that lived near the wall probably had a lot of spare pairs of tefillin in his house, especially if they were unclaimed on Sunday morning. I guess you covered as best as you can. Okay, so let's see what we have over here. So Zok to Gemara. Again, so the question is, are you allowed to go all the way home, or do you have to leave it at the closest house? If it's safe in that house, then of course you should leave it there. If it's not safe, then you have to take it to your house. If it's loy mintera, in other words, if you're saying that a bias halacha, that you're allowed to take the tefillin all the way home, is in a case where it would not be safe, why is this heter only if you're wearing tefillin anyway, and kiddush alav hayayim, you're allowed to walk all over? What if you found tefillin on the floor that you're not wearing, and it was danger? It was in danger. It wasn't in a safe place. The Beitzah we're about to quote, the Mishnah we're about to quote, says you're allowed to lift it up and take it home. So what's a bias chiddush? That if it's on your head anyway, why is that relevant? So now we learned hamoichet tefillin. If you find tefillin that are in danger, machnisan zug zug, you can put them on. You can't carry on Shabbos, but you can put it on, which would then make it hoitzah kal achayad or achnas l'shus hayachid kal achayad, because you're wearing it derech malbush, and that's how you would bring them in one at a time. So why do I need a bias chiddush? That if I'm wearing it anyway, the Mishnah tells me a greater chiddush. Even if you're not wearing it, you can put it on. In one case is speaking where not only is it safe from theft, but it's also safe that a dog won't be able to reach it. This is a case where it's protected from dogs, but not from Ganobim. And what does that mean? So Rashi says, if it's only safe that the dog won't get to it, so if a dog will get to it, then you're even allowed to pick it up and carry it in. But if it's Abaye is saying, right now you wouldn't be able to pick it up and take it in. You know why you wouldn't be able to pick it up and take it in if it was on the floor? Because a dog can't get to it. It's not going to be damaged. The whole problem is someone might find it and steal it. So there's Abaye, if you're already wearing it, even though someone might steal it, you're still allowed to, even though a dog won't be able to get to it, the only danger is it might get stolen, you're allowed to wear it to your home. However, the Mishnah's case where you're not allowed to, where you could even lift it up, even if it's not on your head, that's if it's also in danger of getting damaged by a dog, which would really damage it. Therefore, you're even allowed to lift it up. So Rashi says over here, if it's already protected from dogs, the whole problem is someone might steal it, then we wouldn't let you pick it up. But if it's on your head already, we say you're lichem ad Beitzah, take it to your home. But if you find them in a place where they're not in danger from klovim, they're only in danger of being stolen, then you're not allowed to lift them up. Why? You might think that even if you're wearing it, you shouldn't be able to bring it in if it's nishma from klovim and not from ganabim. Why? Because who's stealing tefillin? A yid stealing tefillin. A yid who steals tefillin is not going to be mizalzel on it. Kamach malon, that you still have to protect it even from a yid who might steal tefillin. See, I had a push at the teretz, but Beitzah the Gemara doesn't hold to my teretz. My teretz is push it. The primary difference between finding tefillin on the floor and finding tefillin on your head is whose tefillin it is. If it's your tefillin, you want to take it home. If you find it on the floor, someone else's tefillin, no, it's enough that it shouldn't get eaten by a dog. But my tefillin, I want to take it home. The Beitzah the Gemara considers our care that we have to have for somebody else's tefillin as much as we have to have for our own. Okay, so Gemara hadin alach Beitzah, you should be zoichen b'leneder to chazir it over again. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. This Mishnah is all about Erev Tavshilin. Erev Tavshilin is one of our favorite topics because it's the Rav's favorite topic, and we're going to see why. Because the Rav loves talking about the halacha of Erev Tavshilin. If the last day of Pesach is Shabbos, and you can't cook on the last day of Pesach, so you have to prepare the kneilach the day before. The problem is, if you don't eat the brooks, you can't make the brooks the day before. So these are the some of the important issues that we have to discuss. So let's see what the Mishnah says. Yom Tov Shechal Yos Erev Shabbos. Tomorrow the Kippur Stop is going to be a beautiful Agad to Gemara, so it'll be perfect to cruise through on Kippur. Yom Tov Shechal Yos Erev Shabbos. Yom Tov that ended up being on Erev Shabbos. So now the question is, are you allowed to prepare food on Erev Shabbos in honor of the Shabbos? Lo yivashal betchila Yom Tov l'Shabbos. You're not allowed to just starting to cook on Friday, which is Yom Tov, for the Shabbos, which will be the next day. Avol mavashel hu Yom Tov, but you're allowed to cook for today, even if you don't need food right now, but you're allowed to cook extra for today, and we'll see why. V'im ha'isir ha'ishal Shabbos, and if you end up having extra food, so you overcooked for today, then the extra food you're allowed to use for Shabbos. However, you can't just do that. There has to be an extra step that you must take, and that is Tavshilin me'erev Yom Tov. You already have to start cooking for Shabbos from erev Yom Tov. You have to make a food on erev Yom Tov. Say this is for Shabbos, so that means you're already in the middle of preparing for Shabbos even before Yom Tov, and that allows you to continue cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos. And then you could rely on it to cook for Shabbos. Rashi Saimach Alav is levashel b'sfilai. Since you've already started to cook, you could be saimach on this food that you started to cook and continue preparing other foods for Shabbos. The Shammai Oimim, it's Shnei Tavshilin. The Shammai says that you need to cook 2 Tavshilin before, not 1. But with Oimim Tavshil Echad, 1 is enough. But the Shavin, they both agree that Bedag u Beitzah Sha'alav change Shnei Tavshilin. Everyone agrees that if you let's say fried an egg coating over fish, that would be considered 2 Tavshilin. Now it's not considered 2 Tavshilin that you have to eat. But it's not considered 2 Tavshilin to send it to Shalach Manas. It's only considered 2 Tavshilin regarding the Eruv Tavshilin. Achlu oisha avad. What happens if the Eruv Tavshilin got eaten up on Yom Tov before you prepared for Shabbos, or it got lost? Then lo yivashal alav b'tchila. Your Eruv Tavshilin is ruined, and you cannot continue to cook. However, but even if a drop was still remaining, then you'd be allowed to, because Shabbos, you'd be allowed to use it for Shabbos. So let's see the Gemara. There's two reasons why it's mentioned why you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. There's one reason is that Ikar Adin, you're allowed to cook the Yom Tov for Shabbos. It's only midrabanan that you're not allowed to. And that's why you have the Eruv Tavshilin to take care of the Rabbanim. The other Shita holds, which is more mashma like the Shmar Mishnah, that it's Dilma Ikloy Archim. Only reason you're allowed to cook you're not allowed to cook for Yom Tov expressly for Shabbos. You're allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Yom Tov. You finished your meal already. You're still allowed to cook even after you finish your meal on Yom Tov, because maybe you're going to have spontaneous guests and you're going to need food for them. So you could say, I am preparing, it's like a harama. I'm allowed to prepare food right now. Why? Because the fact of the matter is, if guests pop in, I'm going to serve it to them. Therefore, if guests end up not popping in and I have leftovers, so then I could use it for Shabbos. So if you want to ask a trivia question, when are we makbid only to eat leftovers on Shabbos? That's in the case of Erev Tavshilin, because the whole reason why you cooked was for the guests that were going to come. They didn't come, so the leftovers that you prepared for the guests are going to be served on Shabbos. So where does it become relevant? Which the Rav likes to discuss, is if the day of the Erev Tavshilin, so the day of Yom Tov, is the second last day of Pesach. You cannot prepare Kneidlach because you don't need Kabroks. So you can't say I'll serve it to Orchim if they come, because I can't serve it to Orchim. I don't need Kabroks on the second to the last day of Pesach. So there was a bunch of different solutions that the Rav offers. One solution is I might have Orchim who do eat Kabroks. Just because I don't need Kabroks, if I have a guest that eat Kabroks, I can serve it to them. And then the Rav says over the Chassam Sofer. He says, since there's a minig b'Yisrael, bedavka to eat kneidlach on the last day of Pesach, and the minig b'Yisrael stems from the fact that we want to show that we're unified as Klal Yisrael. Sure, all Pesach we have different minhagim, we're makbid, we don't eat by each other, but we bedavka want to come together and show that our Isser Gebrux is only a chomer, but really we're all the same. That's such an important thing. Zokt the Chassam Sofer. Why do we ask a Gebrux normally? Because we're afraid that there's some raw flour in the matzah and it'll become chametz. Zokt the Chassam Sofer. If you stick to the minig b'Yisrael to have kneidach the last day, muftach that will not become chametz. So kum d'chais, you could stretch it. Then kum d'chais, on that day you're even allowed to eat gebrocks because you know for sure it's not chametz. But that's not what the Rav said. I'm just stretching it a little bit.
How strong is that minig Yisrael that you gotta eat kneidlach?
The Rav talks about kneidach. It's gebrocks. Everyone's to eat gebrocks the last day. Why it takes the form of kneidlach is probably because that's how everybody feels that day anyway. On the last day of Pesach, everyone feels like a big matzo ball. So
I don't remember growing up that people were makbid on eating kneidlach. I just don't have that memory.
A lot of these hakpadas came from like prepared food stores who made kneidlach. So a lot of these hakpadas came from there.
Right.
Like I always wondered why on Valentine's Day did the world accept that you buy your loved one chocolates or flowers? Why don't you buy them a new furnace on Valentine's Day? It's so much more practical. So I never understood how these minhagim arrived. I have a funny feeling it had to do with the manufacturers of chocolate. Just saying. Exactly, Gemara. So the question here is it's a weird question because we're talking about a derabbanan de halacha over here. So Rashi said the minah is lav dafka. Lav dafka mikroyol if the shilin derabbanan. So Rashi says, "V'haki kama boile hechas mechur rabbanan." The Rabbanan always like finding a pasuk to pin a minagon. So which pasuk would you be able to say alludes at least to this concept of Erev Tavshilin? So Zok the Gemara, it says Zachar Hashem Shabbos L'Katz, right? Which Rashi tells us is really the pasuk that tells you that there's a chiyuv to make kiddush. But we're sort of stretching its meaning to say, Zachreyu, you need to remember Shabbos when you might forget it. If Shabbos is there after Yom Tov and you're packing it in Yom Tov, who's going to have cheshek to eat on Shabbos? The honor of Shabbos is somewhat in danger. Therefore, the Torah is telling us be careful to make sure to be able to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. In other words, while you're on Yom Tov enjoying, make sure that you remember to leave room because Shabbos you have to enjoy. My timer. But what is the reason Lamaisa why the Rabbanon made it? So the Gemara Amarava Kadesh Yiver Mona Yafal Shabbos Umona Yafal Yom. The reason why the Rabbanon made this halacha of Erev Tavshilin is because they want to make sure that you have a beautiful meal for Shabbos, but that you also have a beautiful meal for Yom Tov. So by allowing you to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos, so by making the Erev Tavshilin before Yom Tov, it's setting everything up in place. We're already showing me that even though tomorrow is Yom Tov, I'm already cooking for Shabbos because every day Shabbos and Yom Tov has to have its own individual attention. Rashi says a different reason. So Rava says it's to protect the Shabbos, to make sure that even on Yom Tov, you know that there's still things that have to be held back because we need them for Shabbos. Rashi says it's to protect Yom Tov, because if we make a whole tararam, we have to make an Erev Tavshilin to allow you to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. So Kal v'chomer, from Yom Tov to Chol, you're not allowed to cook. So it's going to reinforce the chomer of Yom Tov, so people shouldn't even dream to prepare food on Yom Tov to eat after Yom Tov on the day of Chol. Tnan we learned. Our Mishnah gave us instructions. How is the Erev Tavshilin done? They make a tavshil from Erev Yom Tov, v'soymech alav l'Shabbos, and you can rely on it to continue cooking for Shabbos. I understand, according to Rabashi, that this is all to protect the honor of Yom Tov, because you're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, to highlight that you cannot cook from Yom Tov to Chol. Hainu the Erev Yom Tov in the Yom Tov loy. That's why, by definition, the Erev Tavshilin has to be made before Yom Tov, because you're trying to show there's a chaymer of Yom Tov. You're not allowed to cook on Yom Tov for another day, so you have to start preparing before Yom Tov. According to Rava, it's only to show that you have to leave something special for Shabbos as well. Then why do I need to do the Erev Tavshilin Erev Yom Tov? If I do it on Yom Tov, it'll also show that I have to have a special meal for Yom Tov and a special meal for Shabbos. Rava, my area Erev Yom Tov, I feel it'll be Yom Tov Nami. Why can't I make an Erev Tavshilin on Yom Tov? Why does it have to be done before Yom Tov? In fact, that is the case. We're afraid if we leave the Erev Tavshilin to be made on Yom Tov itself, on Yom Tov people are busy, there's things happening, you might forget and not make the Erev Tavshilin. Therefore, to be safe, they said you must make it before Yom Tov. Rashi Shama Yivsha, the Yishkach, he might forget, because he's busy. So this is a very interesting question. What happens if you forget to daven mincha? Is that called a pshia, and then you cannot make a tashlumin, or is that called an oinus? Well, Rashi seems to indicate that simply forgetting is considered a pshia, because he touches yivsha as forgetting, not that something occurred that took him away, that made it impossible for him to make the Tavshilin. It's simply because he forgot. And the Tana learned it from this pasuk. So Rashi says, why didn't we quote it? Why did the Gemara ask me on Amili and bring a pasuk? Why didn't we just quote this Tana right away as to where the Torah alludes to Erev Tavshilin? So Rashi tells us, Kain derech shitas hatalmud. This is not uncommon. This is how the Gemara tends to work, as follows: Kishamaschilin ha'amayroyim lo'iti tam min ha'mitzvah. If the Amayroyim sometimes start to show us interesting thoughts that they extract from a pasuk, yeshtana shel brisa lamed oisay yimokamacher. But there's a tana in a brisa that happens to learn the same idea from a different pasuk. Nacharachi, it'll do this. Kloimar, Amayroyim lamdu mikan. The Amayroyim extracted this idea from this pasuk. Tana lamed mikan, and the Tana picks a different pasuk. So let's see what it says. It says in the Parsha Shemon, "Es asher toifu efu ves asher tevashlu b'shem," which is really a double lashon. Where Rashi says, "Havelei lemichlev hayoyim afu b'shlu," cook today on Erev Shabbos, bake today on Erev Shabbos. But it's like a double lashon. Asher toifu efu asher tevashlu b'shelu. We learn Amar Rabbi Lazar, ein oifen ela ala afu. You're not allowed to bake on Yom Tov for Shabbos unless you've already started to bake before Yom Tov. Vein mevashten ela al hamavush. You're not allowed to cook every Erev Shabbos. If Erev Shabbos is Yom Tov, you're only allowed to cook for it if you've already started to cook before Yom Tov. You can't samchu chachamim, then it's only samchu. You can't samchu chachamim le'Eruv Tavshilin in attire. This is the sign, the hint, the asmachta of Erev Tavshilin. You see where it's alluded to in the Torah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. When you mentioned the Rava's reason, Rava holds the reason for the Erev Tavshilin is so you should also remember to eat on prepares on your Shabbos. How does that, like the Sefer of the Mishnah, where it says that if you ate it, you can't go and prepare another one? According to him, why wouldn't you be able to prepare another one?
I guess because the whole time that you're cooking, you have to show that you started cooking before.
But his reasons don't have anything to do that you had to make it from Erev Yom Tov, right? According to Rav Ashi, you understand it, but not according
I hear what you're asking. That's a very good point. But I guess the Gemara said, why b'chlal do you have to prepare it before? For Rava's reason, never mind if you used it up. Why can't you actually make a new one on Yom Tov if you use it up? So the answer was Shema Yivsha. We're afraid that if we allow you to do it on Yom Tov, it will be Shema Yivsha. So maybe that Shema Yivsha also tells us that it has to be prepared from before, and it has to exist the entire time. Because the entire Yom Tov, you need to have that reminder. You need to have that reminder, the entire Yom Tov, that you have to have a special meal
Right.
for Shabbos, and a special meal for Yom Tov.
I'm just wondering, right? But if
You're asking once
it's
they made it, the making it should already make that declaration, not its existence.
right. Well, I'm just wondering because it says, actually, Mishnah says, if you ate it or you lost it, lo yavashal olav betchila. It only says betchila. So maybe according to Rava, that would fit. Because I don't know what betchila means. Does it mean likatchila when it says betchila in the Mishnah?
You can't start cooking since now you've eliminated what you started cooking. So now you haven't started cooking. So now if you cook, it would be considered like you're starting to cook.
It doesn't mean likatchila when it says betchila.
Look, well, what I mean, you want to be the evidence if you cooked without an Erev Tavshilin, what would the halacha be?
No, I'm saying it would fit according to Rava. Maybe likatchila, Rava, we should have it there from the beginning because, like you said, he might forget. But bottom line is,
you already had that. You already had the declaration.
Right.
I hear. Well, it's a nice horror. I don't know the halacha. What happens if you cooked and you were not allowed to cook? You're probably not allowed to use that food. I'm not sure. And you want to say maybe you would, according to Rava, maybe you would be because you still made that declaration. And the fact that you ate it up doesn't change the fact that there was a declaration made that Shabbos is special and Yom Tov is special. Very, very nice. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says. Right, Tanya about my sibra Rabbi Eliezer. So Yosy the Doirish Kalayam Kulay B'Hilchos Yom Tov. So could you imagine if after davening everyone wants to go for the Suda and the Rav gets up and he starts darshaning? So there's a Rav who's very, very confident that people like to hear him speak. Why? Because he after the davening on a Yom Tov day, there's a pause 5-10 minutes to let anybody who wants to leave, and then he gets up to say a drasha, and he speaks for 45 minutes, and the shul is packed to the rafters. So you're thinking I'm making this up. It's impossible that such a thing exists. But there's a Rav. His name is Rabbi Beitzah Berdinsky, and he's the Rav of a shul in Monsey on 4 Shea Road, just south of Grandview. And I used to be by my brother-in-law on Sukkot, so I was by many Yom Tovim, and it's amazing. Davening's over, maybe 2 people leave. People come from neighboring shuls to join, and it's packed, and then he speaks for 45 minutes, and the oidim stays. It's unbelievable. Okay, so Zok the Gemara. Tanya about my Seber Rabbi Eliezer Yosy v'Darish Kalayim Kula B'Hilchos Yom Tov. His drasha wasn't 45 minutes; it was going on and on and on. We're getting close to Mincha time.
And the one got to speak, right?
Left.
I said to someone, "You think someone pulled a fire alarm?" I said, "How I got thinking." He said, "No." He said, "If someone would have pulled a fire alarm, I would have finished eating my kugel."
Before I left, I hear. Okay, you heard that Shmuel said. The Rav got up to speak once by a kiddush, and a lot of people ran out. So Shmuel said, "It looks like someone pulled the fire alarm." So the guy answers, "If someone pulled the fire alarm, I would have finished eating my piece of kugel before I left." So Zok to Gemara Vayt. So he was darsing the whole day, and people started getting itchy. So Yotzah Katri Shaina. One group of people got up to leave. Omar, you know what he said about them? Halol about lipatzim. These people must have full, big barrels of wine to drink today, and they need more time to drink it, so they're already leaving now. Kachnia, a little later, another group said, "Hey, it's getting really late. We got to go." Omar, halolu balechaviyos. These people also have wine, but they have a chavis which is smaller than a patzin. Kachlishis, when the third group got up to leave, he said, "Amar halolu balekatan." They just have jugs of wine, so they just left themselves enough time to enjoy their wine. Katravias, the fourth wave left. Amar halolu baleginian. They just have smaller amounts of wine available, so they don't need to have so much time for the suda. Katchamishis Amar halolu balekaishis. They only just have individual cups of wine. So they have very little wine to drink, so they can afford to leave later. Then is chilukat shishis lotis. Then the sixth group was already starting to fidget and leave. Amar, he said about those, halalu bale me'er. These are the people who don't even have wine. The Bismedrish is starting to empty out. It's already the sixth group that's leaving. Uganaya dover. The Kasher Beinov, so he was like upset that people were leaving. So he said, these are the people who are dealing with curses. It's funny. So who is the only person who remains standing? Because it says, Nosnu Eina B'Talmidim. He looked at the Talmidim, who was still there? Like the famous story. The guy who was still there was the next speaker. That's why he's still there. Right? So his chilu, Pnei Mishtanen, when he gave them the eyes, they were becoming very uncomfortable that he was upset at them. Why would he be upset at them? To the Rashi at the bottom skinny line says, Kisavurim Shekoyis Al Kachishis. If he's making a sort of a nasty comment about the six people that left, it might mean that maybe he's saying you should have all left earlier. I'm darshaning, but you should have left earlier. And we didn't even get up the lead. For sure, he's upset at us. So he said, no, not to be concerned. I'm not upset at you. And he told them, Amar lahem, b'ni, loy lachem, ani omer. I'm not making these constructive comments to you. I'm commenting on those that people are left already. You, I'm very happy with. The reason why I'm making the comments to you is because you're here. They're giving up the ruchnius of learning Torah, and they're focusing on the Chatzi Lachem. The Shas P'tirasan, when he finally dismissed the class and he finally finished his drasha, maybe an hour before Mincha, they had just enough time to run home and have the Suda. Amalam, told him, L'chu, he quoted from a pasuk in, where is this pasuk? A beautiful pasuk. It's in Nehemiah, and he said as follows. He said, L'chu, where am I up to? L'chu, ichlu mashmanen, go eat fat things, v'shishum amtakim, and drink sweet things, v'shilchu monos le'inachan loy, and send shalach manos to someone who didn't have prepared his own food. He kaddish hayom la'adeinenu, that is holy to our master. Don't feel bad. Because doing the simcha of Hashem is what's going to strengthen you as a nation. And the Gemara to the Darshan the Pasuk. Amar, Shemanichin Chaya Olam, the Oiskin the Chayisha. The taina that Rabbi Eliezer had was that his Talmidim were abandoning Chaya Olam and they're being Oisik b'Chayisha. In fact, the Gemara, Basimcha jumped of mitzvah. How could you say that they're abandoning Chaya Olam? The mitzvah of Simcha Shamtav, isn't that also Chaya Olam? So come on, Rabbi Eliezer Tamei. Rabbi Eliezer holds the Amar Simcha Shamtav Rishus. There's no chiyuv to have Simcha Shamtav. There's not even a chiyuv to have a Suda on Yom Tov. The Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Aimer, Ein Lo L'Adam B'Yom Tov, Lo Oy Oychel V'Shoyse, Oy Yoyshe V'Shoyne. A person has an option either to have it Kuloi Lachem, you can eat and drink all day, that's mutter to do, Oy Yoyshe V'Shoyne, or Kuloi Lashem, or learn the whole day and daven the whole day and don't indulge at all in anything that will make your goof happy. Rabbi Shua says, no, chalkeyu. You're supposed to do both. Chatzei l'Hashem, v'chatzei l'chem. So Amar B'Yochanan, Dr. B'Yochanan, Shnei Mikra Echad Orshu. They both learned the same pasuk, and came out with a different conclusion. One pasuk says, "Atzeres l'Hashem alekecha." It should be a yom tov to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Because of Echad Atzeres Tilachem, it's a yom tov for you. So what is it? Is it yours or is it not yours? So it's up to Gemara. Okay, it said, you have a choice. If it makes you happy to be kul Hashem, then do that. If it makes you happy to be kul Hashem, do that. So therefore, Rav held you should be learning a whole day. You shouldn't be indulging too much in anything that's for your growth. We have Yeshua Sover, Kalkeyo, no, moderation. The best way to honor Yom Tov is by doing half and half. Chetzel Hashem, the Chetzel Hashem. The pasuk says, "Go send manos la'ein nachonloi." Who should you send to? Amar B'chista, it means l'mi sheloi hiniach Eruv Tavshilin. So Rashi says the question is la'ein nachonloi can't just mean somebody who doesn't have, because then it should say l'mi she'ein loi. What's up is la'ein nachonloi. So because of that, the Gemara darshans that it means someone who did not leave the Erev Tavshilin. Ikad Amri, Lami Shaloi Hayaloi Laniach Erev Tavshilin. It's someone who didn't have anything with which to make an Erev Tavshilin, so he didn't have any food. Aval Misha Hayaloi Laniach Erev Tavshilin V'Loyaniach, but someone who could have and didn't, Pasheyahu. He's a Pasheya. Maybe you shouldn't send him anything because he's a Pasheya. My Ki Chedras Hashem Tumah. What does it mean? That being Masamech with Rebbeinu strengthens you. Amar B'Yochem Mishum Abelazar ben Shimon, Amar Makadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, B'ni, my children, Lavu Alai. Even if you don't have money for Tzarech Yom Tov, borrow money. V'kitzu Kedushas Hayoim and be Mekadosh Yom Tov with a beautiful Suda. V'aminu bi, you can trust in me, V'ani Peireya, and I will pay up your loan. So this is a very, very controversial line in the Gemara, and Tosfos right away asks. It says Lavu Alai V'ani Peireya. The Gemara says no. Better make your Shabbos choil and not have to rely on people. That's one nusach. One nusach is if when can you borrow money? If you have a hope and a realistic possibility to pay back, but to borrow without any cheshbon whatsoever, that you're not allowed to do. And in such a case, you should better make Shabbat choil. But the Haggais, I think it's the Maramsburg over here. No, it's the Gra. The Gra says, the Gra saying, no, even if you have no plan of how you're going to pay back, as long as you can find someone who's going to lend you money, you should borrow anyway, and I will help you pay back. So that's what the Gra Shita. There's a whole bunch of different Shitas. The first, I think in the first Simon of Hilchos Shabbos, the Gemara, the Mechaber discusses this. A whole bunch of different Shitas about how to answer this. There are those who say that I say Shabbat Chachol Shabbos, but Yom Tov you are Mechuyev to. But I think most people learn that if you borrow, if you realistically pay back, and if not, then I say Shabbat Chachol. We should know from things. We should have such a big shefa. It should never, ever, ever be an issue. We should always have so much to give, and there shouldn't be people who need. If you want your nechasim to remain, you don't want them to dwindle. You don't want inflation to eat away at them. That's not really what it means. You want to protect yourself that people shouldn't steal your properties from you. So Yita ben Adar, you should plant in them an Adar tree. Shenemar says in the pasuk, Adir b'morim Hashem. The greatness of Hashem is Adir. So you see, Adar is great. Inami Adar kishmei. And Adar is like the name Adar. Kedamri inchi. My Adar. What is the Adar tree? The Kaimel Dari. It's a plant that's very robust and very strong that lasts a very long time. So the first shot in this Adar b'morim Hashem, the Rashi says, Yidom Adar is an Ilon Chashavu. It was a very expensive, very prestigious, noticeable tree. When there's these trees, everybody knows about them. And people will say, Ploini Reuven has this very, very fancy tree in his field. It's something that's talked about, and therefore it'll protect him as the owner, because everyone knows that the owner of that field with the big oak tree is this Reuven. The same way they'll call the tree busser the owner, the whole field will be identified according to the owner, so it protects his property rights. What if he travels far away? and someone tried to park into his field, squat on his field, and when he comes back, he's not able to claim it back. He'll have Adam. Yes, Adam Harbe, he'll have many Adam that will know that the field was his because it was talked about because of the Adar tree. And even if he sells it, and if he sells it, then everyone will know that it was sold. It's something that people will always know about. Now, there are those who learn that Adar means you have to give tzedakah, or because it means Adar referring to Chodesh Adar. There are those who learn that you have to go with the midah of emes, or you have to have talking in the Rosh Hashanah. And there's a Rosh Hashanah of Adar that I was supposed to remember to share with you, that I believe I forgot. Let me just think. Rosh Devar Emes, yeah. Rosh Devar Emes is a Rosh Hashanah of Adar. Rosh Devar Emes, if a person always goes to midas emes, then his nechasimo, the mekayim, and he'll be mitzvah. Okay, so to more weiter. Inami Adar kid Amri Inchi, my Adar the Kamal Dardar. Tanya Amhachi, Sadish Shesh Badar, a field that has Adar in it, any exelis, vein the chmesses, it will not get stolen or seized, even with pay, because, like we said, it's a prestigious tree, everyone knows about it. Rashi asks, how in the world does that type of tree protect your pears? So Rashi says it's a type of grass, might not be a tree, it might be a price of grass that if you plant it, no, I'm sorry, Rashi says either if it's a heavy tree, if you plant it around the borders, it will act as a barrier to protect animals from getting in and damaging it. And Rashi also said another shot that maybe Adar is a type of grass and it has qualities to scare away animals, and it'll stop rodents and worms from eating it. It's like people sometimes put cayenne peppers or vinegar they put around their flower beds so that animals won't attack them. That's what this plant had, those properties. Tanu Rav Tachlifa Avud Rav Noi. Rav Tachlifa, the brother of Rav Noi Chazah, learned Kol Mizaynoisav Shal Adam Suvin Loi Me Rosh Hashanah Va'ad Rosh Hashanah. I believe the Aleph changed it. It's not just for those 10 days. Me Rosh Hashanah Ad Rosh Hashanah. Chutz Me'etzoy Shabbos V'Yavim Tovim. The only thing that's not in the Cheshvan is Shabbos and Yom Tov, and Vaitzas Bonav L'Talmud Torah, and anything that he spends on tuition. Shempachas Peichsin Loi. If he doesn't spend so much money on Shabbos and Yom Tov or on tuition, so he won't get as much. And if he does spend more, they'll add it to him. And listen, you still have to have the money to lay out. So I'm not sure how this works exactly. So let's see Rashi. Rashi says something interesting about Mizanoshim Shaladum Suvim. This is what Rashi says. Anything that he was going to earn, that he would support himself off, cuts of loy. It's set up in advance. And look at Rashi's lesson. And therefore, Rashi, you have to be frugal, because you don't know if you're going to spend more than what your budget is, and you don't know your budget. So therefore, be careful just not to spend more than you have to, because you don't know how much you're going to have. Then, if you run out of money during the year, they're not going to give you extra. Whatever was made up before. So it's funny. Rashi's saying is we don't know how much we're going to get, and if we run out, we're not going to get more. So we should be very frugal and never to spend more than necessary on ourselves, because otherwise we might run out of money. So Zok Rashi, they didn't set up on Rosh Hashanah exactly how much your budget and how much you're going to spend or how much you're going to earn for your Tzarchei Shabbos. Rather, they adjust that budget afterwards. Depending on what he normally spends on Shabbos, they make sure to get it to him. They make sure that if he gives less, they'll give him less. If he gives more, they'll give him more. So I always tell you that when I make a chasna, I always tell my wife we have to make a budget. Why? Because if we budget, then when the credit card bill comes later, we would have done the math before. If you don't budget, then you have to deal with the aftermath of the wedding. The aftermath is a lot more expensive than the before math. I always like doing the before math rather than the aftermath. So that's how it works on the weekday. But on Shabbos, it's always aftermath. Because on Shabbos, Hashem looks at what you spent, and based on that, he allots your budget. So the Rosh Hashanah should help that we should be Zoichet to Yom Shekulei Shabbos U'Menucha. We should have unlimited budgets for everything the Rebbeinu should give us with a Shefa Rab. I want to wish everybody a wonderful, easy
Right.
fast. And Mitchell, we're going to learn by the break. Should we learn right before Mincha or should we learn right after? I think we should learn right before Mincha. So we should first take the break and then we'll learn. So we'll learn an hour before Mincha. And Motzei Yom Tov, I guess at 9:30, I'll repeat tomorrow's stuff. And then Friday morning goes back to regular, which is we can sleep in to 6 o'clock.
It's good. Good.
Oh, yes. Yom Tov.